Okay. We're now live. Okay. Hi everyone. I know we already talked for a little bit, but we are now live. I'm super excited. How are you guys feeling? Good. All right. I will get into it then. So hello to all of our members and to anyone watching at home. My name is Mallory Murphy, and I am the Executive Director of Generation Activism. Generation Activism's main goal is to provide a safe space and resources for young people who want to be involved in activism and advocacy. Tonight, we are holding our first panel, or conversation without a guest speaker. We think it's only fitting that we chose the topic of feminism during International Women's Week, and we are so excited to be having this conversation and to hear each other's perspectives. Tonight, we hope to teach and learn from each other, and for our viewers and members watching live, to provide the perspective of young activists on the conversation of feminism and gender equality. I am so excited to be co-hosting this panel tonight. With that, I'll pass it to my co-founder, Mallory Holloway.
Thank you, Mallory, for introducing our group and our topic for tonight. I'm Mallory Holloway, co-founder and communications director at Generation Activism. I'll be your other co-host for tonight. Kind of to deepen our understanding a little bit, feminism, defined by Oxford Language, is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. Feminism began with the women's rights movement, and it all started in July of 1848 on a hot summer day in upstate New York when Elizabeth Cady Stanton was invited to tea with 4 of her friends. So that kind of reminded me of what we're doing tonight. So the movement basically just grew from there. As you know, there's marches, protests, legislation, everything, a bunch of current stuff. To this day, we continue to strive for that exact goal. The United Nations has even made it a top priority on their list of sustainable development goals, which is super cool to hear. And our goal tonight is kind of to bring light to the issue, hear multiple perspectives. So with that being said, I would like to invite our panel to introduce themselves.
I'll go. Hello, everyone. I'm Kate, pronouns she, her, and I guess I'm 16 and in 10th grade.
Do you want to pass it to someone else?
Yeah, sure. I'll pass it to Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret Delaplane. I'm the secretary of GENACT. I'm 14 years old and I live in Georgia, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'll pass it to Jack.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm 16 from Delaware. He pronouns are he, him. I'm gonna pass it to Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira. I'm 16 and I live in Virginia, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm gonna pass it to Miranda.
Hi, I'm Miranda. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 15 and I live in Virginia, and I'll pass it to Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm 16 and I'm from Delaware.
All right, thank you everyone. So without further ado, we only have an hour, so I'll get into our first prompt for the evening. Anyone feel free to contribute if it sparks anything. So our first prompt is, what does feminism mean to you on a personal level? And I guess I can just start with a brief background. I mean, obviously, most of us here are women, and we've experienced gender inequality on different levels. And I think that there's kind of a misconception that feminism is less of a modern issue and that we are kind of already equal on the basis of sex in this country. And I don't think that's true. I think definitely everyone here has experienced one thing or another where they've felt unsafe because of their gender or felt discriminated against because of their gender. And I'm no exception to that. I mean, there have been times from a young age when I didn't understand why I couldn't go on a run outside at night and why I couldn't do this and why I couldn't do that. And as I grew up, I learned that it's, you know, it is related to my gender. And as much as some people like to look at it with rose-colored glasses, we are not equal yet based on sex. And so I think on a personal level, feminism to me, I just want everyone to be equal. I just want everyone to have the same opportunities and rights and fairness and freedoms. And I don't think it should have to do with gender. So with that, anyone else can jump in on what it kind of means to them.
Well, to me, feminism is sort of about having, again, equal opportunity, like you said, but also like not letting things be structured by label as much and treating people as people, not girls or boys. And yeah.
I guess I'll go. So, feminism means to me like overall, like women being equal and like being able to do things. And like specifically when I think of feminism, I think of like a story and like examples from my childhood is like as a kid I was always very tomboyish and I wanted to do like guy things, like just it's something that I didn't want to be like the girls. And like the stereotypes of like you have to get the girl toy if you went to a restaurant and you got like a toy in your meal, or you couldn't play baseball, or just like things like that would like very much enlighten me to how I was different because I was a female, especially wanting to live in a boy's world with doing all the masculine things. And so I think feminism ties together of like, I don't need to be a male, or I don't need to like be like in boy culture to be able to like masculine things. And I just think to like bring that to like equality is like what it means to me.
And I think on another level, sorry to cut you off, Miranda, but just to add on to what Kate said, I think part of um, the thing around feminism is that what is really a masculine thing and what's a feminine thing. Like, I know from a young age, like you might have wanted to do things that traditionally in society are labeled as masculine, but why are they labeled that way? Like, why can't they just be for everyone? So I think that's just an interesting thing to point out too.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, feminism to me is way less about bringing men down and more bringing women up and not having to be worried about so many things all the time just because I'm a woman, and being able to like wear what I want without being worried about like what men will think and everything like that.
Yeah, I think there's like a big element of like choice, kind of like women should be. I think women can often be like more heavily criticized for anything they do, and kind of I've always sort of felt like no matter what you do, it's wrong. And like I think it would be very nice to be able to just kind of have the choice and like whatever you want to do, less criticism there.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important because there is that misconception that everything's okay and there isn't any more issues when that's not really true. Even the things that they say are solved and the only thing you need, sorry, that's my mom's phone. It's not really, hold on, let me turn that.
Yeah, no worries. Just kind of to build off of what Kira said there, I think that's just a really fair point. Like, just kind of whatever you do, whatever you choose to do, there's going to be a side of people that says that's not the right thing. You know, you dress too girly, and oh, you're like a frilly girly girl. You dress too masculine. Oh, you're a tomboy. You need to be more feminine. Just kind of whatever you do career wise, you know, you want to stay home and you want to have kids and you want to work in the house and that's all you want to do. That's, you know, you're conforming to the society standards for women. Oh, you want to go have a big career and have a family. Oh, you can't do that. That's impossible. Like, I think whatever you do, there's going to be backlash. And I don't think it's really the same for men.
Yeah, I just think that like the judgment around it, like I know that like if I like whenever I go somewhere, like it always has to cross through my head, like, will I get judged for doing this because I'm a woman? Like, will this go through my head? Like, will men be there and like will this be a problem?
Right. So if anyone else has anything to add on that prompt, now would be the time. If not, we can move on to the next prompt. Okay, cool. Mallory, do you want to take that one?
Yes. So have you guys ever experienced any type of discrimination or privilege on the basis of gender or sex? Like by experience, I mean personally, like had it happen to you, obviously, or even kind of seen it happen in someone else.
Well, I mean, I know for me, I think growing up, like I have two brothers, and my family is very my family is very good about, you know, making sure that we all are able to have the opportunities that we want and be able to do the things that we want. But I noticed, like, you just notice it growing up. You get older male relatives saying, oh, she's going to be a heartbreaker when she grows up. You get things like that you just don't get with the boys. And I think that's very an interesting thing to pay attention to. It kind of implies that all a young woman is really good for is to grow up and then be of use to a man. And I think it's really interesting because those little comments, they're not supposed to mean a lot of harm, but when you kind of look at it overall, why is the main focus of a 6-year-old little girl what she's going to look like and how boys are going to perceive her when she's older?
Yeah, and I think going along with that, like I've had a lot of experiences when I'm like out in public, especially at night, where there's just like creepy men around and you're just like looking around and like you get really nervous. Like it's really scary and they're like looking at you and like I have guy friends and when I'm with them, like it shouldn't, but I just feel more secure just because they're like bigger and just because they're like men, like I just feel more secure, which shouldn't have to be a thing. I should be able to like go out at night and like not be worried about creepy men everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I can agree with that. Like, I've been walking home from the beach with my friends, and I've been, wearing maybe shorts and a bathing suit top, walking along the sidewalk back to my beach house, and people have rolled down their car windows to whistle at me or to honk at me or to say things to me that are based on what I look like and what they want to do with me. And it might seem, I've had people say, you should take that as a compliment. And I think that's just insane because when you like it's terrifying. I'm walking home, I'm 14 years old along the side of the highway in a like not thinking about what I look like to others or what I'm wearing. I'm just coming home from the beach. I'm hot. I don't want to put a shirt on. I don't want to put pants on. I'm just walking home and to have people whistle at me and honk at me or to be walking, along the sidewalk with my friends to go get dinner and being dressed up nice and having this is true. So having a Jeep full of college children, college men roll down their windows to honk and suggest that we get in the car and other things along those lines. I think it's talked about as if it's just a normalized thing, like, oh, it's just boys will be boys, they'll do that. You're gonna get catcalled, it's part of it, but I don't think it should be part of it. Like, and it's not talked about enough that that's a terrifying thing to experience. It shakes you up. You feel very gross. It doesn't feel right, and it shouldn't have to be something that we have to put up with just for walking outside in a bathing suit. I'll see teen boys walking home from the beach wearing nothing but like a Speedo and no one says a thing. But when it's me and I'm wearing shorts and a bikini top, suddenly I am there for that group of men to look at. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, like that statement, boys will be boys, is like so harmful. And then like also to think about it, it's not even just the catcalling and all that they get that caught on. Like think about how many times someone has been sent home, like a girl, because they had a spaghetti strap on, you could see their bra or their shorts were too short because we would distract boys. Like at this point, you're saying that their education is more important than ours just because of how you educate them and how they are supposed to think and how you excuse their behavior, and it's actually affecting our livelihoods. Like what about that lesson that was important that day that we got missed out on because you didn't want them to miss out on it because of
Hey, Natalie, could you try to, I don't know if it's just me, but could you try to remute and then unmute? I just lost your voice for a second there. I don't know if that was just me. Yeah, you could try trying it again. I don't know if it froze.
Yeah, I think your connection just got a little bit cut off, but I see where you're going with that. Definitely that's definitely an interesting perspective to kind of think of the education aspect of that. I never really thought about it that way. But it does kind of imply that that boys' education, men's education is like they'd rather us go home than distract them. It's kind of an interesting way to put that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
And going off of that, like I think a big issue in most schools is dress code, and the difference between a male wearing a tank top and a female, and like how that's seen as different things. Like, I never personally really had many issues with dress code as I typically wear longer and baggier clothes due to like insecurities, but like you shouldn't dress code a girl on the first day of school because her pants aren't down to her, like your middle finger. Like you shouldn't have to measure that. You shouldn't have to like worry about that. And like I remember even when I went to a Catholic school before public, before dress down days, the principal would say, no spaghetti straps. We don't want the girls showing what they shouldn't, like, got to keep them good. Like these are like common jokes and like things that like we see as normal, but it shouldn't be, because it's really not promoting first body positivity. And it's really not being fair, because I've seen boys at school wear tank tops and that's perfectly fine, if like, and even to where they're baggy enough to where you can see like their chest. And so that's perfectly normal. And wearing, what boys want most times, I'm not saying all times, because at times men can get dress coded, but it's just, you see it and you look at it and you take a step back and you're like, what? So yeah.
Yeah, even today, like this Kira drives me to school, and I got in the car this morning and I was like, hey, like, do you think this shirt, like, do you think like I should bring a sweatshirt, or like, do you think I should wear this to school? Like, I don't know if like it'll be weird or anything. And I did. I like grabbed a sweatshirt and I like wore it to school because I was just like worried about like the teachers and like the guys. And I was just like, I don't want to have any like problem with it.
Yeah, and I go to a private school, so we don't have the choice to wear whatever we want. But I think even looking at the dress code, it's really interesting that on a hot day, like, beginning of September, when we get back to school, it's maybe 85 degrees outside. I can't wear knee socks. I cannot even wear knee socks. I have to wear tights, so that no aspect of my legs is available for anyone to look at. The skirts also have to be a regulation length. And I have personally witnessed a lot of times male teachers, it's always males, never ever female teachers, coming after girls my age, 14 and 15-year-old girls, wearing their skirts too short. I actually have personally witnessed a teacher call someone that they looked like a harlot because of how the skirt length that they were wearing. And I think it's so interesting to me that it is so normalized for a grown man to be commenting on the skirt length of a teen girl. And the boys, they can wear, I don't know if there's a short dress code for boys, but they can wear any kind of polo that they want, their shirt, that like, it doesn't have to be regulated, and there's no consideration with that. Like their comfort is being just, it's completely fine. Like they're completely comfortable in khakis, like comfortable khakis, and a polo shirt that doesn't have to be tucked in. Maybe I'm really hot like, it can be really hot to wear tights in September. It can be really hot to wear tights. I'm sure at the end of the year, it'll get really, really uncomfortable to be wearing like thick tights just so that boys aren't looking at my legs. And I think that the dress code thing has been going on for, hundreds of years. And I think that's a big aspect that isn't really talked about, but is a very, it's an important thing. So I wanted to kind of lead, this is going great into our next prompt. I wanted to bring up the prompt of the sexual aspect of feminism, because that is a very, very big part of it, right? Because, part of the whole thing is that we don't want to be perceived sexually. We don't want to be perceived as sexual objects, or objects of, just for men's desire, when that is not how women are, like society says women perceive men. I don't know if that makes sense, but if anyone has anything they want to kind of start the conversation about this with, that would be great.
Yeah. So just kind of even backtracking to what you were talking about, like the catcalling is what people call it. That definitely is, well, a lot of things are way too normalized, but that definitely is one of the major things that is normalized. And not even, the worst part of it is that adults will tell you, oh, that's normal. That's just what boys do, as you said before. But why? Like, is that just what boys do? Why are they never shamed for it? Why is it always, the boys will be boys thing? I think a lot of situations can relate back to the boys will be boys. That's just your typical middle school boy, high school boy. But why is it like that? Like, if everyone is so disciplined and schools are so strict about implementing rules, as you said, like the skirt thing, why do you get punished for wearing that? But then when boys or men start sexualizing like girls, then why is that not a problem? Why is that less of a problem? You know, it kind of clashes ideas.
And yeah, like adding like even adding on to like a whole different conversation is how females are perceived in media and like in different places. Not even just media, like if you're really thinking about it, like think of the restaurant Hooters. Like the whole thing about that restaurant is that you get some beer and the girls that, I mean, not that like, the girls who work there, there's anything wrong with that, because there's not. Absolutely, if you want to do that, that's what you do. But the idea of the restaurant and where the idea and topics of it come from is kind of problematic. And I mean, I'm all for the women working there, which is, I think, incredibly, like, it's amazing that like females do that because they can respect their bodies and do what they want. Absolutely. But the idea of stuff like that, or to even bring up another subject, is like how straight men sexualize lesbians, and how it's like you see gay men as disgusting most times, like straight men who like have that feeling, but then they watch lesbian porn, and that's perfectly, like, it's like to think of like, why do you see two women who are most certainly not interested in you, why do you see that as an invitation for you to be aroused or for you to have something to gain? And I mean, like, just to bring like that topic up.
Yeah, I think sexuality and feminism, like the whole, like they're very interrelated, just because of how sexual, like the whole sexual aspect of feminism. I think, with what you said, like it's just so normalized, and you get adults telling you get everyone, and it's not these specific adults' fault. Like when they tell you that, it's because that's what they've been taught, and that's what they've had to learn from their parents and their grandparents and so on and so forth. Like it's not, it's just a generational problem. Young women are being taught to protect themselves from men, and they're being taught to be wary and be careful around them because you never know what they're going to do. They're also taught that anything they do try to do, it's okay. That's just what they do. They're just being a boy. But what are boys taught, right? They're not taught how to respect women, and they're not taught how to, I mean, if they have good parents, they are, but generationally and, over time, they're just being taught, that they can do what they want. They can be the boss. They can be in charge of things because of their gender. And it might not be that blunt and that out forth. It's not like their parents are telling you, hey, you're a man, so you can do whatever you want and we won't care. But it's just in the subtle things. It's how parents or guardians respond to a girl going out in a crop top. They're saying like, you can't wear that out. You can't wear that out. That's too showy. But if their son wants to run around on the beach with no shirt on, whatever. It's you know what I mean? It's a very like normalized thing, and it's not the specific parent's fault, but it's over generations. It's what happens.
Yeah, I definitely I definitely think that just to kind of clear up what Mallory said, I think yes, parents are definitely teaching their sons that. I think that, never, you don't want to kind of just disregard the parents' rules, but it's mostly other adults and other guardians in their life, because parents will teach kids the right thing. I think there's a lot of instances in which they won't, but I think for the most part, parents will try to teach boys that thing. But with peers and other guardians and teachers, even, like there's just so much countering. Okay, I'm sorry, Miranda, go ahead.
Yeah, going back to like what Kate said, especially with media, like I know in like a lot of the TV shows I watch, there's always like one character, like a girl that's like just always like sexualized by the guys in the show, and usually like it's unwanted too. Like it's just like funny for like this girl to like repeatedly over and over again be like told things, and like everyone laughs because she's always like objectified and sexualized, and it's just normalized. Like we watch it and we just laugh along with it because it's like supposed to be normal. And yeah.
And one thing that I would like to note on top of the conversation of this is not all men are like this. And we do not, as females, see all men as this. We see a particular culture and a particular breed of men. Not all men are like this. I know many fabulous men, including in this organization, and people, and Jack, amazing. It's not for all men. And I feel like sometimes if we're going on different perspectives here to have like a counter argument is like, men think that all women think like that, and like all women want to assume that everything that they do is bad. It's not like us being like sensitive. It's us out of like what we growing up and like have been doing, have seen from certain men, and like we get that generalized idea. But when, like I said, I would like to point out, during this discussion, that we know that all men are not like this. So I just think that's something important to say.
And to touch on that, that's so interesting, because I had literally written something out that I want to touch on kind of related to that topic. And I'm just going to read it because I don't want to, like, it's a complicated analogy and I just want it to make sense. So what I said was, when humans see something that could cause harm to them, they have an instinct to protect them. For example, if you see a swarm of wasps flying around, that instinct would kick in. Of course, not all of those wasps are going to sting you. Maybe none of them will sting you, but you can't be expected to know which ones will and which ones won't just by looking at them, because they all have the ability to sting you, and some of them want to sting you. They have the potential to be dangerous to you. So when people, or more specifically men, say things like, not all men are dangerous, that is true, and we know that. But as women, we cannot be expected to distinguish which men are dangerous just by looking at them. We have to be careful, we have to take precautions, because one of the wasps might choose to sting. So yes, not all men, but a man that won't hurt me looks the same as a man that will. And I think that's like a really interesting conversation to have. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, like I was actually going to try to hit that too, because yes, we know not every guy wants to do that, but you won't know. And with the sexualization of women, there's that fear and that violence that comes with it. And it's dangerous for you to just assume that it really is no one. I mean, it's better to assume that it's everyone than to assume it's no one just for your own safety as a person who may not have the defenses up for someone who would do something to you if you rejected them.
I totally agree. I loved that analogy. Thank you for that. The analogy was really good. Yeah, so if no one else has anything to say about this sexual aspect of feminism, can I move along?
I'd be interested if you're willing to hear Jack's perspective on kind of that whole conversation, just because
Yeah.
I want to get the other side too.
All right.
Well, like, I think a lot of guys probably consider themselves feminists to some extent. Like, we all have mothers, grandmothers, girlfriends, female friends. I know you hear that a lot, but like, they're all people you want to see do well. So, like, I think a lot of people consider themselves that, but it's hard to say anything about that. Just because, like, it's hard to even say that like out loud, not just to other guys. Like, it feels like something you're gonna get blowback for. Obviously, a lot of this stuff that's ingrained in the culture, you just kind of get swept into. Like, even if that's not your kind of content of your character, someone starts doing that, and like, if you don't have strong enough willpower, then you're gonna get sucked into it. So yeah, that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I would agree that it's not like these little boys are growing up with an evil intent. It's just kind of the surroundings that they get exposed to. And, there's going to be one kid in the friend group that, suggests, like what Kate said, hey guys, let's look up lesbian porn. Let's have that. Let's do this. It's not like it's not like we think all men are evil. It's just we think that all men may have been exposed to different things that might make them dangerous to us. So yeah, and I'll pass it back to Mallory because the next topic is super interesting too.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally agree with everything being said. So let's talk about some ideas, concepts you guys have. What is something that people could do to prevent either the sexualization we've been talking about, or just overall discrimination of women?
Well, honestly, I know this is said a lot, but I think it's difficult because, like, honestly, I think a lot of men, like, now, there are super, like, a lot of respectful men. Like, my little brother, he's, like, been raised, like, around females, and, like, he is super duper respectful of women. And I've noticed that, like, a lot of times that this has been encountered, it's often been with like older men and like older people. So it would be kind of hard to be like have their parents raise them. But I think especially for the new generation, just like being respectful and just like it's really difficult to like think of a way to like get rid of it completely, because obviously it's always going to be there, because there's always going to be like older people like like enforcing this in the younger generations. But I just think like just raising people that even just not even like that women are like should be treated differently, but just that everyone should be treated the same no matter what you look like.
I think something like what Miranda said, it's just kind of like it's too late. It's not that it's too late to change and to like learn from your surroundings and to be educated on how you can help be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. But it's too late to re-raise all the men that are now adults and who are causing a lot of the problems in this situation, because it's not really the 5-year-old little boys causing this problem, it's the men. But these men have already been raised, and I think there's been so much change within social issues within the past generation that we are going to see a completely different generation of men when these little kids and these little boys are adults than the adults that we have now. And I think that it's not a bad thing to have the adults that we have now. And it's not like we're trying to get rid of, passing down customs and passing down just traditions in your family, but we're just trying to pass down the knowledge that, okay, we're going to teach girls how to protect themselves, but we're also going to teach guys how to not be part of the problem. We're going to teach them how to be respectful. We're going to teach them how to use their privilege to help lift up women's voices. We're going to like that kind of thing. I think it's all about generational. So I would be interested to hear what you guys think about stuff that we can kind of do now, like anything along that line.
Yeah, I definitely think what we do, kind of just outreach, education. I will say it a million times. Education through the media, education through school. That it needs to be part of the curriculum, not to learn about how to not be mean to women, like how to learn about equality and learn about more current events. I know a lot of people are fighting for a more current curriculum for history, social studies, and I think that's a lot more important than people think. What we do as Generation Activism, I think is super important, and I think like not even trying to say like join Generation Activism, but join something or watch CNN Student News so you can learn. You don't have to agree with everything that they say, but more people need to be educated. Like just if people could see both sides, and sometimes I need to see both sides to kind of form my opinion, but if people could just see both sides, I wish there was just like a giant projector that we could just display some information on. That would be amazing. But, I'm honestly just outreach is the most simple solution that is the hardest to push out.
Going off of that and like the whole history standpoint, I think something that's not as well educated and talked about in school is history that involves powerful women. We hear about all the men who, the founders of the country, the people who did this, all these people, all these white men who did things for the country or did things to develop like our world or like where, like these impactful things. You do not very often hear about many powerful women who accomplish things. We basically, like if I were to sit here and at the top of my head tell you without having to like think about it, what impactful women I could name, I could give you two. I could give you Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman. That's about it, because we only learn about them because we're learning about slavery. We're learning about them because of segregation. We're not learning about them because of feminism. We're learning about how they were impactful in an overall picture, but not women. We don't learn about the Women's March. We don't learn about these things that we should. We hear about the white men who did things, and I just think it's something that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, I definitely think one of the biggest problems too is that we need to address the minorities within women. There's Black women, there's Indigenous women, there's brown women, there's LGBTQ plus women, there's trans women, and there's everything else that's in between. And when you don't address those problems, there will never be a real feminism. I mean, the whole history of feminism has rooted from excluding all of those people. So when you don't include those people in those educations, and you don't start thinking about those problems too, none of these things will be solved. I mean, you can't solve feminism without solving problems in the Black community or the brown community. You can't solve feminism if you still disclude trans women and LGBTQ plus women. So it's you have to also like expand into not just women's rights and work and everything, like many different things affect, like even just poverty within women. Like think about COVID right now. More women lost their jobs because of the burden having to take care of their kids during this pandemic, but we don't address the poverty. So how will we ever solve feminism if we don't address one of the highest populations who are actually impoverished? So it's just one of those things where you have to start solving multiple issues in society to actually help that bigger issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the history aspect of it. Like, I've been in the before this year, I was in the public school system from the time that I was in kindergarten, and how many times did I learn about the American Revolution? 100. How many times did I learn about the Civil War? 100 times. But how many times did I learn about the feminist movement and the movement to get women the right to vote? Never, not once. And even in those movements, there are so many impactful women that were part of the Revolutionary War, that were part of the Civil War, that are not being talked about. What about all those nurses who risked their lives to save people on the battlefield, to cook food, and all these things that I couldn't even give you all the details about because I didn't learn about it in school. And I learned about other things. I learned about the men in those situations. And I think just teaching kids in school that women have an impact on history and have an impact on where things are today would really bring about so much change that we're not seeing.
100%. I mean, I agree with everything. Again, everything being said is completely agreeable. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Well, yeah, because I kind of wanted to point this out. If you propose that and you start implementing that in more liberal areas, it's going to take off. But if you do that in like small town Indiana, the people that like are outraged about this are always going to win. So it's going to be exclusive to where it is that you're talking about. So you're only going to reach the people that already agree with you, which is the issue. Like you've seen it with like the 1619 projects. Whenever people don't like something, they're the ones that are going to win because they're the people that know the principal, they know the school board. They win in those situations. So I mean, I don't have a solution to that. I'm just pointing out that there's a flaw there.
I do think that another thing is, Mallory was talking about like history and stuff, and in my history classes, we haven't ever had like a subject that's like an actual school subject that we've learned about, but a few of my female like history teachers, like we've talked about it a little bit, like it's always brought up like a little more than like in male history teachers, and so I do think that there's like a little bit of like that, like people do want to talk about it. I think it's way more of a problem with like the school board and the education system itself rather than like the teachers.
Yeah, I would say that the problem kind of lies in the curriculum and the way that it hasn't been changed in a really long time. And we're still learning the same way that and I think, we could have a whole conversation about the curriculum and the education system. But I think in the topic of feminism, and about what Jack said, I think it's about over time kind of learning to change the norms and be comfortable with getting uncomfortable and having these conversations with men and little boys and teaching them, yeah, people that are like you have harmed people that are like them. And here's how we fix this going forward. And I think people are scared to have that conversation because it is uncomfortable sometimes. It's uncomfortable to talk about the sexual aspect of feminism. It's uncomfortable to talk about how horrible men were to these women fighting for their rights. And that's kind of what I've experienced in classes talking about slavery. It's shut down, it's whitewashed, it's sugar coated as to make people feel more comfortable. And I think it's just time to get uncomfortable. Like we have to just have these hard conversations and just like stop worrying about the feelings of the oppressors. We need to change the narrative. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, kind of to add to that, I think the getting comfortable with being uncomfortable thing goes into so many different topics. First of all, I'm just gonna say it, like the guys being afraid of the period thing, like really needs to stop. And like we can't teach about it to people. We can't teach young girls when there's guys around. And they like in school they get so uncomfortable, but it needs to be it's more normalized to be scared of that type of thing than it is to be helpful. Like if a girl is in class and you see she has blood running down her leg, don't freak out and like take pictures or something. Like help her. And I mean that goes into so many different topics, but that's just one that, if you're kind of scared to reach out to a girl or to talk about something that you think is gross or your friends have told you is gross, we need to not normalize that.
Yeah, I really agree. And like a really good thing that I noticed is our school actually, like, we went back this week for the first week and Kira and I actually, we went into the girls' bathroom and they had like free pads and tampons, which we've never like seen that before. And it was crazy. We were like, oh my gosh, like something has like been done about this because we've been talking it for forever. And like, it was a little weird how shocked we were because like no one talked about it. Like, everyone, but like if I brought it up with my friends, I was like, did you see the bathrooms? And they're like, yeah, oh my gosh. And like it was like a real step, and like just like getting rid of the stigma and like having that available without like being worried about it.
I've always been kind of amazed. I have some guy friends, and it's always funny to me when they don't know anything about periods. Like obviously they're not women, and like they're not going to know everything, but like it's really incredible how like they don't know any sort of way of how it works. I've heard stories of like guys who think you can like hold it in and like all this sort of stuff, and it's like amazing that there's not even like a basic level of education that a lot of these guys should just get, not just to like if they have a girlfriend at some point, they should just know like the basic sort of functions of it, which is always funny to me.
Yeah, I think it's like that aspect of it is so interesting. I'm so glad you brought that conversation up because like just I think all of us here have stories where we've been in public and panicked because we don't have a pad or tampon or we don't have money to buy, which that's a whole other, we've talked to Senator Kyle Evans-Gay about that conversation about period legislation and period equity and how girls are missing school because they can't get into class because they don't have the money at home to buy pads and tampons, so they can't go into class because people will make fun of them for blood, people will talk about it, people won't help them, they just can't, and they can't afford the ones in the school bathroom because they cost money. And I think that's a whole interesting thing that like if a boy goes into the bathroom, obviously he doesn't need resources for pads and or for periods, but all the resources that he needs to go to the bathroom are in the bathroom, and they don't have to pay for that. Like you don't have to pay for toilet paper, you don't have to pay to use a urinal. So I don't understand why just a bodily function that most women and some people that aren't women have experienced is so stigmatized and is so like just not talked about and is a tax. Like it's ridiculous to me how that conversation goes.
And also, I know they're very different things, but you can get condoms for free in a lot of places. I honestly couldn't tell you one place where I've seen free tampons. Like, honestly, I couldn't tell you. Like, sometimes I don't look for it because, I'm not always on my period all the time. Like, but I've honestly, I can't recall one time I've seen free period supply anywhere, ever.
Yeah, and another thing with that is there's like a really big stigma around like asking for it, like too, like especially if you're like in school and you don't have the resources. Like there's been so many times where I've like panicked, like who do I go to? Like because especially asking the teachers, there's just like a big fear around it that people will judge you for like a natural process, and it's just like a really big thing that people will be like, that's gross, but it shouldn't be gross. And you like, I've been terrified too. Like I've gone without because I've just been like, I don't want to go up and ask someone because I don't want people to judge me for a natural process that every woman faces, And it's like, that should not have to be a thing. Like I should not be worried and I should not have to go without because it's like a big stigma.
Yeah. And if no one has any other things to add on that, I was going to suggest that we move on to our next prompt. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, cool. So our next prompt is definitely an interesting topic, the recent election cycle. Let's talk about the recent election cycle and how it relates to feminism. Does anyone want to take that away?
I guess like how like the recent like, change in president has affected feminism as like a whole is like well, I feel like there's an issue with a lot of political leaders of their past with like women and like the accusations. I know Trump had a lot. Biden was supposed to have some. I'm not 100% sure if those were confirmed or not. That's just what I've heard because like, but I think the difference between Trump and what he has said in the past and what actions he has done towards females, including feminism, is entirely different than how Biden acts towards women. And just this shift and change is just different. And it's somewhat refreshing and somewhat makes you wonder. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Makes you wonder, and like think like, why was Trump like that? Like, why did we allow him to get away with a lot more than he did? And the simple answer is money. And the fact of Trump was a businessman and Biden was a, career politician from Delaware. And like the two different like balance acts of like who the men were. I mean, I could just like start off that conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of bringing it back to a little before that, like just the election cycle before Biden was elected, there was so much at stake. And my family, my mom works really heavily with elections, and she works with politicians, and I just that fear was so real to me. And I am someone who is lucky enough and privileged enough to not have to worry about it in so many. Like, I didn't have to worry about it based on my sexuality, based on my gender, or sorry, not based on my gender is the problem here. My sexuality, I didn't have to worry about it based on my race, based on if I'm cisgendered or if I'm transgender or non-binary. I didn't have to worry about it in so many fields, but just how high at stake it was for this man to be elected again, it was terrifying. Just looking at his history, I believe he had somewhere between 30 sexual assault allegations and 40, which is staggering. And I think it's not talked about enough how staggering it was that the president of the United States, someone with virtually the most power in the world, had that many sexual assault allegations, and it wasn't talked about that much. I just think that's a really interesting thing to point out.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like, there's a variety of things that we could talk about that went wrong. But to kind of shift to Vice President Harris, that the fact that we now have the first female vice president is absolutely insane. We went from being scared of having our rights taken away to having an amazing role model in the whole entire United States to look up to. And I think that change was very much needed. I think I'm doing a project in English about women empowerment through sports, and they talk about young girls need someone to look up to in sports to keep them going for succession. Oh, I mean, you can name so many successful men, and obviously that's definitely biological. Men are a lot stronger biologically than women, and it started historically. There's more women who have succeeded in like the Olympics. Women haven't been able to have that chance forever. Men have always been able to succeed in the world. So to have a woman vice president, for people like us, people who need politics and need someone to look up to in that realm, is so important, and people don't realize, right? Like the first woman to walk, the first woman to be an astronaut, the first woman to, you hear that all the time, but I feel like there was just such an underreaction from the world. Like, this is the first female vice president ever. It's crazy to think about, and there wasn't as much of a reaction. And I think it's going to change a lot of people's viewpoints, a lot of people's lives, even to strive for this goal. And I think it's really important that we, notice that we have a female vice president right now.
Yeah, and I think on election, I kind of have a story to add to kind of add a personal aspect of this. So on election week, I should say, it took a really long time for the results to come in. The day that the results did come in, I was actually babysitting, and I babysit for some little boys. And I was at their house when I got a text from Kira actually saying to check the polls because it had just been called. And I remember their family kind of was on the same page as us, so we were all super excited. We were talking about it, and then their parents left to go do what they had to do that day. And I was talking to the little boys about this election and how historic it was. And I was like, just brought it up. I was like, guys, did you know that this is the first time that a woman is going to be the vice president? Isn't that cool? And one of the little boys said, but how is that good for me? Because I'm a boy. And I think it was really interesting because I looked at this little boy. I mean, little, he didn't understand what he was saying. He didn't understand the impact of it. But I think it's really interesting because it's good having a female vice president is good for everyone. And because no one's questioned how for years there's been no female representation in the White House, but now people are worried that there's too little male representation in the White House because of one woman, but no one's been thinking about this for the centuries that it's only been men. I think that's really interesting conversation.
I just think it's very important that she's a Black woman. I mean, I'm biracial, but I'm considered as a Black woman, and I will always rep for Black women. And I think it's so important because I don't think a lot of white people know this, but every older Black person in America, I can literally promise this to you, has a picture of Martin Luther King and President Obama on their wall in their living room. Every single grandmother I've met, every older aunt, every older uncle, they literally have a shrine to Obama and Michelle Obama and all of them on their wall. And when Kamala Harris basically broke that glass ceiling, that was a new thing because Black women carry a lot of things in this country. Like people didn't see how much they carried this election actually. Even just the Georgia runoffs themselves, it was a lot of Black women organizing those voter drives to get people out to go vote again. And I just think it's very important to recognize that because like Black women are a very important part of feminism, and it to be included is important.
I was always fortunate to have positive female role models in my life. Like when I lived in Delaware, I had, of course, my mom, and I still do, and Mallory's mom actually, and Mallory. They were always really big heroes of mine because of all the like political debates we got in and all the things we used to talk about, and I loved that. But then in Georgia, not a lot of my friends have that because it's kind of more Republican, like more that type of mindset, like a closed mindset in this case. And so it was really odd to like go to the school that I go to and see that not a lot of them had as many positive female role models.
Yeah, I think just this election cycle has been so interesting because we transitioned from someone who um, really just did not respect women. And I'm not going to be shy about saying he just had no respect for women. He had no respect I mean, there was like barely any women in his administration. He did not care about representation. He did not care about feminism. He was a pro-life politician. He was trying to take away our healthcare rights. And he had 30 sexual assault allegations. This is not a good role model for women. And then we went from having that to having a Black woman as the vice president of the United States. And I think it's so incredible. And I think people really didn't realize how much it would affect little girls and even just all women, I think, in America, because no one's had that yet. Like I remember I actually was fortunate enough I got to attend the election result speeches. And I just remember standing there and looking at her and just thinking like she is the second highest person in command in this entire country, and that has never happened before. And it meant so much to me personally, just because of like how important politics and activism is to me, and how it kind of makes up who I am as a person. I just like looking up to someone and like realizing that it can be done, and we can break that barrier, and we're making this happen, and it's happening a lot faster than it used to. And I just think that's incredible. So
Yeah, with like what Mallory said, I remember when the results came out, me and my mom were watching the thing that you went to, and we were just like there was such a sense of relief, just like a sense of like there are people that are like advocating for what we like need, and it was just really relieving for that like switch in power, and it was just like such a sense of like things can get better and things can improve, and like we're taking a step towards it with this.
Yeah. So I definitely think this conversation has been really good. So I just want to, I know, as you guys know, our time is almost up. So I kind of want to just pull in any final thoughts that anyone has, if they could do it in a quicker manner. Just kind of any final thoughts at all.
Yeah, I think we're ending on a pretty positive note, just talking about the hope that we have going forward. Um, so I just would like to kind of ask, as a kind of to wrap up, what do you guys picture? Like, what would be an ideal thing for you to have happen in feminism? What's the next thing that you're hoping will happen? Just kind of looking ahead. How are you feeling about that?
Personally for me, and I think like something that most females and feminist people would agree with is to not have to have these conversations, to not have to fear going outside or getting raped or sexually assaulted, to feel equal, to have equal pay, to have all these things that we talked about tonight and then we talk about in different situations, and not having to talk about that. When and if that would ever become a reality is an entirely different topic, but I feel like that as young girls in activism and feminism, we all wish for a world where everyone is treated equal. Women are respected more, and like these topics just don't need to be a topic. I don't know, that's just my personal, I feel like a lot of you guys would agree. So
Yeah, 100%. I definitely strive for equal pay. As I said before, United Nations is definitely making that a top priority. I think the world is headed in a hopeful, optimistic way with our new leaders. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything. I think we're headed in the right direction, and I think people similar to us, people who have the same ideas as us, are gonna definitely help that in the future.
Well, I just want to end with something very quick. I just really hope that this feminism, I'm going to say it again, is really more expanded into Black women. It's one of my biggest subjects. And I really want Black women to be represented. And I want Black women to know that it's not just a white woman movement, it's an all women movement. And that their voices are heard. It's added in because there are problems within the community of women, between Black women. And I hope it improves.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm just like my biggest thing is just I hope we see more representation. And this recent election cycle has been amazing for that. On the national level, we elected the first female vice president. We elected so many amazing women to state legislators. I know in our state, we elected Sarah McBride, the first trans woman, we also have there's just so much more representation. I think next election cycle, I'll be able to vote. And I know a lot of you guys will too. And I think that as we kind of move forward as a generation, we are going to bring more change than the world is really ready for. We're going to make things happen at a faster pace than has ever been seen before. And I'm just really excited moving forward. I'm really excited for what's going to happen. So if no one else had any thoughts, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say the exact same thing.
If no one else has any final thoughts, thank you everyone for participating in this discussion. I've definitely got some perspective, and I think this conversation has been really, really interesting. For everyone watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. If you want to watch this in the future or send it to any family and friends, this will be up on our YouTube channel, as well as all of our previous meetings and upcoming meetings. Our social medias for TikTok and Instagram are generation.activism. For Twitter, we are under the platform GENACT2. Our next meeting is with Kim Eppeheimer, who works with homelessness and who works at the new homeless shelter in Wilmington, the Hope Center, which is converted from a hotel hotel to a homeless shelter. So that is next Friday night. If anyone would be interested in watching that, we would love it if you would tune in. Thank you again for tuning in tonight, and I hope you guys enjoy